96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network.
You have to be strong in today's world. Keep your focus and what you believe in, how to achieve all your dreams. Keep moving forward, never accept less than who you are. Live your best life. Be strong and free. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black.
The Hits Back with Nahaja Black is sponsored by the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, Baha Retreat and Spa, Kalina Financial Advisors Limited, J.S. Johnson, Central Bank, and the Water and Sewage Corporation.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. I'm Hubert Edwards and I'm sitting in today for Nahaja. It is certainly a pleasure to be here, pleasure for you to join us. You know the numbers 323-6232, 325-4316, 325-4259. The text line is 422-4796. That's 422-4796. So let's have ourselves a conversation today. We see in the news from the Guardian newspaper, Ministward welcome inquiry. Former Prime Minister says spending and promotions were above board. 8 more COVID deaths. Department of Social Services to take over food distribution program. Freedom of Information Office building capacity. So they're working on getting up to speed. In the business section, we see Cruise Ports CEO reveals high cruise ship bookings for 2022. Mara, we already have more bookings than we had in 2019. Nassau Cruise Port will have access to its newest berth by December. US-based private aircraft association blasts propose LPIA fees. GBPC targeting 25% smart metering penetration, so that's Grand Bahama Power Company, and the newly minted minister, Sweeten, exciting times ahead for Family Islands. And so, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to focus on. Many things have been happening since the recent general elections, and the conversations are ongoing. But I think at some point in time, we have to get to a place where we start to look fundamentally at the issues which will potentially harm us, and potentially hurt us. We have to start to have a real deep contemplation, and I'm not saying that there are persons out there who are not doing this, but we need to talk about the impact of COVID beyond, cases per day and persons are dying, so on and so forth. I think there's such a significant disruption which is taking place in the country today, in the world, in the region, that to ignore those developments will do so to our detriment. And I would want to believe that the recent election being out of the way and having a brand new administration, a brand new mandate, if you will, that the discussions are going to be broad-based, they're going to be deep, and they're going to be holistic in considering and contemplating not just what we are faced with today, in this moment, this very minute, but what comes tomorrow, what comes next month, next year, and how, having gone through 18 months of a crisis, a pandemic, how has that radically changed the lives, shift the opportunities, and put in an uneven way the fortunes of many persons? And we want to concentrate on that within the context of the effect it will have on the country, how lasting it will be, how lasting it is going to be on the individuals directly impacted, and therefore what should be done, and how those realities should inform policy, how those realities will help to shape and develop programs and initiatives such that we can mitigate against any detrimental outcomes resulting way down the line. I think it's very, very important to do that. Today, I want to give special shout out to healthcare workers and educators. And if you're out there and you wish to contribute to this conversation, we definitely would like to hear from you. We'd like to get a bit of an insider view, an insider perspective on some of the points I will make today. And we're certainly inviting you, the listeners, to join in on the conversation at the appropriate time. But it's a fact that COVID-19 has created a significant amount of social and financial disruption, in addition to the economic and the health disruption. Sometimes when you become overwhelmed with a particular reality, we may often lose sight of some of the more finer points which are important. And this is what we want to look at today. So it's been 18 months now, and what of the impact on education? We have heard over and repeatedly that thousands of students have not yet logged on to their devices or log on to the electronic platform. So what is going to become of those students 18 months? Are we in the process of losing significantly on maybe big portions of a generation, or at least a segment thereof? For those who are of school age right now, especially the more senior ones, are we losing them? Those who were struggling, who may have not had the way, clearly paved from an educational perspective, those who would have run up into obstacles of being unable to secure devices, being unable to get on devices, being unable to secure consistent connectivity. What is to become of those individuals? 2 years. Well, 18 months so far. That's a long time. It's a very, very long time in the life of a student. For a student who is in a senior high school, for example, grade 7, grade 9 to 12, if this crisis hit when they were in grade 10, grade 11, which would put them maybe somewhere at 14, 15, somewhere thereabouts, given its currency, given the tenor so far, and given the likelihood of its continuation, before this is over, we are going to have adults who have not been sorted out as we would normally have done through the educational system. Imagine a 16-year-old young man or woman, young lady, who on March 2020, at the point when eventually schools were no longer doing physical intervention. At 16, not one of your most brilliant students, but with work, with focus, with a teacher hovering and poking and prodding, the student does okay. But outside the physical realm of the classroom, that student becomes wayward, don't log on. The reason is, or the excuse is, I have no device, I have no connectivity, so on and so forth. Next year, that young lady, young man is going to be 18 or 19, full-fledged adult, but would have missed easily, based on our projections at this point in time, staring down the barrel of 24 months if things go well and it wraps up early in January. Yeah, near 24 months. But what of that student? How will that student then be positioned to continue, one, journey as a learner, which would still be needed, and two, to continue on the path to becoming a productive citizen? What are the interventions which are required? And I raise this question to say, we have some immediate problems, some immediate issues in front of us, like how do we get them into school? How do we get teachers to be effective? What are the challenges? We hear of potential tension between the union and the Minister of State, and how that may work out. But there are some larger issues at play here. And these issues fundamentally impact, in the long run, the state of the nation and the standard of living of individuals and the extent to which the country will have to afford social programs and social safety nets, because these individuals are not being sufficiently enabled. Nobody fault, right? We're not blaming anyone for that. It's just the reality of facing with this. So it's almost like casualties of war. Those who can, those who are able, those who are enabled, those who are better able will make it. Some will scrape through, some will do okay, and the usual bunch will be brilliant. But what about those who fall through the crack over 2 years and then step outside the system? Maybe the one chance, the one opportunity, the only way through which they can sort their lives out. What are we going to do with those individuals? How are we going to fix them? Because fix them we must. Are there going to be social programs connected with educational initiatives which ensure that they get into BTVI? Or if those individuals are not technically inclined and wanted to move along a more academic track, is there a way for them to do over, to remediate their issues, their problem? Because they won't be able to qualify to, say, go into a COB. But will we need to create some sort of a middle ground, a halfway house in terms of an educational process for these individuals? Have we considered that? I know one of the biggest challenge, one of the areas which I think creates a wrinkle when you start a discussion in this direction, is the idea of repeating students. And often it is proffered, the reasoning is proffered, that this is going to be an expensive proposition. And you understand why. If you repeat, especially if you get back into the physical classroom, where you're going to put these people who are being repeated. And so there's an attendant cost. And that is easily understood, readily understood. But there must be too consideration for the fact that there is a cost. A huge cost, maybe exponentially more significant than repeating individuals, of not creating facilities or opportunities for persons who may slip through the system as a result of us going through this COVID crisis to be given the opportunity to gain what they may have lost. Because it could become plenty. In normal times, I think we're losing lots of students because, educational system ineffectiveness, because maybe parents don't do what they ought to do, because students get all the opportunities but don't take full charge of it, for any number of reasons. But herein is a abnormal disruptor, COVID-19. And so as we look at and formulate policies going forward, we must start thinking about that segment of individuals who may get left behind. And I may be so bold as to say that some of them, if nothing is done, will get left behind. And then what? How do we manage those? How do we ensure that as a country, we do what countries and nations ought to do, and that is to facilitate, to protect the future of the individual? Can't guarantee it because they have to do their part, but there needs to be some way of facilitating that. So last year we heard, and maybe even in recent times, that maybe 15,000 students have not logged on. I can't confirm that number. That's number which has been bandied around. Think about it. Let's assume that of that 15,000, say 20% are senior high school students. So that would be 2 times 15 is 3,000, yeah? 20%. Imagine in another 6 months, there are 3,000 students moving into adulthood, or at least being out of school, who are totally and unequivocally unable to, because they have not participated in any educational endeavor over the last 24 months. We're into 2022 now, so it will be 24 months or so. Because they have not done that, they're pretty much stuck. Now, this happens in normal times. What I'm trying to highlight is that you'll have an abnormal number of those. What is it exactly are we going to do with those individuals? Recognizing that within the society that we live, there are many instances, ongoing instances of social inequities, economic inequities. It's unfortunate, but it's more normal than we might want to accept across the world. Everywhere you go, there's going to be someone who is uberly rich, who owns 90% of the wealth of the country, and then the rest, 10%, is spread out between the rest of the people, of which 3 or 4 more owns 90% of the 10%, and so on and so forth, that ultimately there are some persons who just don't have nothing. It may not be that bad or that stark in the Bahamas. The Bahamas is, in generally speaking, a richer country where more opportunities are available to more persons, comparatively speaking. But still, there are many individuals in this country who are really living in poverty, living below the poverty line, and who are not at a place where economically they can do the things necessary to lift themselves up out of that cycle of poverty. Individuals who can trace their state, current state, to that of their mother, father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. They're pretty much living in the same way that 2 or 3 generations before them have lived. And without some serious intervention, without some massive shift, their children and possibly their children will be in the same state. Why is this important? It is important because while here and now it may not be a challenge, as you look out further in terms of years and the growth of the country, the growth of the population, the more poor people or very poor or extremely poor individuals you have, the more challenged the country becomes. It becomes challenged from the place of productivity. Individuals who must be taken care of in one way, shape, or form by the state have to produce additional housing. I'm not saying they're giving them housing, but the facilities need to be there. They have to provide them with additional schools. They will be going to the hospitals. They're more likely not to be individuals who are able to afford private health care, so the government will have to pick that up. And because they absolutely can't contribute anything to it, because they absolutely will be at a place where their productivity as a human being, from a work or career perspective, is on the lower end, then ultimately the state, me, you, and them, to the extent that they can contribute, we have to carry everybody. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to suffer. It don't mean that they're going to live like the Joneses. They're not going to be, moving up like George and Weezy. But we have to carry them. The state have to carry them. It therefore means that we must look at the things which could cause that to happen in 10, 15, 20 years and create means of intervention to stop that from happening, or to at least mitigate the extent to which it will happen or could happen. It doesn't matter, how effective the program is today. In 20 years, there's still going to be poor people. In 50 years, there will be. The issue here is the extent to which those individuals who may find themselves, despite their best effort, and regardless of the opportunities available, which they have tried to take full charge of, if and when they struggle, the country should be in a position to deal with that. But they always say that an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. And so we have to start to pay critical attention, especially to poor people. No disrespect, poor people. People who don't have money, who don't have resources, who don't have the things that many of us take for granted. Persons who, when COVID strike, start to say, well, Wi-Fi, what do you mean by Wi-Fi? I have to go now get Wi-Fi. I have to figure that out. We were cool with a smartphone, and whenever we need to, we would, juke up beside a building and get some Wi-Fi, or, when we have some money, we'll do some credit. But we could work through that. Now you have to have dedicated facilities, dedicated access for an entire day to be able to be in class. The student who is the child of a single mother who needs to go to work but have no place to leave these children, no one to leave them with, and therefore is forced to make a decision between work and the child's school, which then becomes a vicious cycle sooner or later, because somewhere along the line, some money has to be paid, even if it is to pay the bill in order to create the connectivity so the child can remain in class if there's no school fee. So the programs and initiatives going forward must seriously consider the existence of these individuals. One person getting a text here. Okay, let's see. We have a couple of texts. Good afternoon, Mr. Edwards. All is not lost. You said parents are not doing what they're supposed to do. I didn't say that. Maybe you should rephrase that and say some parents, likewise, some students have done well. All is not lost. Sometimes I'm a little bit perplexed in how what I say get interpreted. I need to do a better job maybe at communicating, but I didn't say any of that. I singled out a portion. I took 15,000, I took 20% of the 15,000, right? And that's the portion I was talking about. It wasn't, there's absolutely no way, even if COVID is to be with us for the next 5 years, there are students who will never ever see a classroom and be brilliant, absolutely brilliant. It just happened. There are always going to be good parents, and there are going to be parents who are bad, and there are going to be bad parents with a question mark. Because a lot of time we judge good or bad in interesting ways. Good because we look at the results. So the child is nice and smart and well-dressed and well-read and can get all of the things and go to school and pass the exam. But that's because the parent is rich. And bad because we see the results which are opposite. But that's sometimes because the poor mother has tried, the father is trying every single thing under the sun, but just simply unable to get it done. So we have to be careful. And I certainly wouldn't want anyone to walk away thinking I'm saying that all parents are bad. Absolutely not. It's not the case. But there are some instances where parents can do more. Even those of us, I would put myself in those of us who try our best. We come up short often in many, many ways. Sometimes we are just lucky that we have a little bit more resource, which kind of balances our inadequacies. Caller, go ahead. You're on Guardian Radio.
How you doing? How you doing, Mr. Edwards?
I'm doing fine.
That's good. Good afternoon, Bahamas. Mr. Edwards, I have a terminology that describes my experience in adulthood in the Bahamas. I say we are a society that is socially infantile.
Socially infantile. Those are big words. Break that down for me, man.
All right. Just want to give you a case scenario. There's a sense of insecurity when somebody actually comes to help, when somebody wants to help, when somebody is qualified to help. Okay? I was advised sometime back in, I think it was 2002, 3 maybe. Say, Nick, somebody says, Nick, you know what? You know a lot, but what's happening while you're not getting off the ground is that you're not qualified. So you go and you get qualified.
When you say qualify, you mean having some sort of educational qualification?
Degree.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
A paper that show that, you can master or articulate in an area of interest.
Okay.
And they were right. But I find that when you come back to the Bahamas, there's such a, insecurity. And that's why I describe the society as socially infantile, because they're still afraid that somebody's going to take their toy and run away with it. Let me speak to your topic, COVID-19, and what it should have meant to us as a country. Robert K. Greenleaf, a renowned advisor to 3 or 4 presidents, he wrote a book for servanthood leadership to some effect. And one of the principles I got out of that book is downtime is preparation time. And what we may have missed as a country is the last 2 years, this would have been, in my view,
preparation time.
I
want to agree with you from this perspective.
Pardon?
I posted something recently, and it says, "Do what you can with what you have." Basically, do what you can with what you have until you can do more.
Hey,
And one of the things which COVID has done when we were all shuttered and we couldn't move was that it gave us opportunity to sit down and reflect and think and prepare, get a better perspective of some of the issues which we would have not dealt with up to that point in time.
Mr. Edwards, I've been to prison.
You have?
Yeah, I've been to prison. I spent 2 years in prison. The Bahamas knows it. Doesn't matter. And after prison, I went off to law school, graduated, upper second high in law degree, came to UGND Puch, graduated, most outstanding student, but still not given a second chance. But that's not what I call you about. Okay? When I was in prison, all right, I asked God, or the Lord, as they say, why did you bring me down to this level? What is it that I have? And you know what he says? I saw Moses. What did Moses have? Moses didn't think he had anything either.
Okay.
God said, what is that you have in your hand? Moses said, a stick.
Oh,
and what did God tell him to do, or the Lord, as we say it?
Use it.
Tell him to do with it?
Use it.
Use it. Use what it is that you are entrusted with in the moment. I was in prison, and I asked, so what do I have? I'm in prison.
Time.
No, you know what the response, the intuition came back to me was?
Yeah.
You have time.
Time. Yes.
Use it. I had time. 2 years of time. And let me say, Mr. Edwards, I did not let it go to waste.
Wonderful.
Okay?
Wonderful.
Everything that came across my sight or within my reach in terms of reading material, I read and I read and I read and I read, whetting my appetite to such a degree that when I was released from prison, I immediately signed up to the library membership. It was free. It was free.
Yeah.
And I used it.
Great.
3 years later, I was in law school. 4 years after that, I graduated with the second highest degree in law. Came to the Bahamas, did UGND Puch Law against opposition now. This is a long story cut short.
Yeah.
And I graduated a most outstanding student. Me, Jeff Lloyd, Halson Mutri, Viana Gardner, Ryan Pinder. I was his group leader.
Okay.
Okay? You're Attorney General.
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to practice law. Because why? Because of a socially infantile society who thinks dare not let him get a second chance. That's too far.
Hold on, slow down. I think this is an intriguing story, right? It may take us a little bit out, but I want to explore this. I think we should take a break. Can you hold on and we come back on the other side?
Okay, fine.
All right, let's take a break here. When we come back, I have a couple of questions for you.
Girl, Junior just showed me Bella Boy in his phone.
What you mean? He take picture of that good-for-nothing boy?
Shh, you don't want Bella here. You say that. You know she always say that's my good child.
So what he doing in Junior phone?
Oh, he there because the police looking for him. He on their wanted list.
Wanted persons in your phone now?
Yes, child. And when police want to find anybody quick, after something happen, they can send picture direct to your phone. Go to Google Play or App Store and search for Crack Crime Bahamas. Then pick install and it will go straight to your phone.
There is also a section on missing persons.
Yes, girl. Everybody needs to get this app so police can tell us right away when these people go missing. Just like an alert system.
Yes, it has numbers for Crime Stoppers Bahamas, so you can call and nobody knows you. Call directly to Miami and give the information without giving your name or anything about you. I tried the other day, and when I hear Junior and his boys talking about where they hide those guns, I walk quick round the corner and call that number.
Call 328-8477 from Nassau or 242-300-8477 from the Family Islands.
You invest in your children, your home, and your community. But are you investing in your financial future? At CFAO, we specialize in investment management, retirement planning, mutual funds, and private wealth management. Our team of experts never stops helping you plan for tomorrow. Because tomorrow begins today. Call us at 502-7010 to see what our financial advisors can do for you. CFAO, growing wealth for future generations.
When I had got prostate cancer, my family didn't know if I was going to live. At Cancer Treatment Centers of America, within days, I got an appointment. They presented me with treatment options, and we set up a robotic prostatectomy. When my scans came back, there are no signs of cancer. They don't see you as a number, they see you as a part of the family. I'm going on with my life. It's a real gift.
Call us at Cancer Treatment Centers of America.
It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black.
And welcome back to the Hit Back on Guardian Radio. I'm sitting in for Nahaja Black. We have a text that says, while you shout out to education and healthcare industry, give a scream for the farmers. They need the tire on the equipment to service their farms. A whole week has passed waiting for one tire to be changed. Ridiculous. We give a shout out to the farmers and all the industries, persons right across the length and breadth of the Bahamas who are out there working, generating income, providing work, providing livelihood. We want to say, well done, keep up the good work, and your efforts is ultimately for a worthy cause, because this is about nation building. So, sir, I want to take a couple of minutes out of this, just lock into what you have to say. So you went to prison.
Yes.
And I want to take this opportunity to shout out to a young man. Well, I don't know if he's young, but he's been in prison for a while. He told me in a letter, 15 years. I was able to, through the good commissioner, be able to deliver 2 copies of my books. Well, 1 copy of my 2 books to him. And so, I hope he got them. I hope he had an opportunity to read and draw something from that. So you went to prison, you got this revelation, you came back out, you were allowed to register to do your LLB. Ultimately, you went to law school, but you're unable to practice because you were convicted.
Yes.
Yeah. And what do you think? What do you think should be done? Is it in your mind fair that you should be kept out of the not being given an opportunity to use the things that you have now learned because of that conviction? How does that feel to you?
Well, I feel slighted. I feel dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
But like I say, I rounded off to what I call an infantile society, a society that hasn't matured, okay? To realize that the judge, when he sentenced me,
Mm-hmm.
and that was really the underpinning of one of the underpinnings that drove me forward. You know what the judge said to me when he sentenced me in court? Just acting Justice Malcolm Adley.
Mm-hmm.
He said the law was meant to serve as an end and not to be an end in itself.
Mm-hmm.
What he said, in fact, or what that means, in fact, was the law was meant to stop the crime, to reconcile the wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but it was never meant to destroy the wrongdoer.
Mm-hmm.
The law was meant to be an end, not to be an end in itself.
Yeah. Do you mind sharing with us what you were convicted for?
It was a string of things. There was some Canadians that I had held against their will. It was firearm, ammunition, causing harm.
Uh-huh.
This was an incident downtown on Charlotte Street with some Canadians that I acted vigilante. I acted as a vigilante.
Mm-hmm.
The Court of Appeal came to that conclusion.
Okay.
That you were acting as a vigilante, and this thing was blown way out of proportion. And by the way, that judgment by the Court of Appeal has disappeared off the record.
Can't disappear off the record.
It has. I've been asking for it from the Court of Appeal so that I could have submitted along with my application to be called to the bar, so that in considering my application, they will have a sense of what we call the moral turpitude, involved with the offense.
Okay.
There are so much things that has disappeared out of nothing, no less than the Court of Appeal.
Yeah, but there's a clear rule that if you are a convict, then you would not be given right to be an officer of the court.
That's not a rule.
It's not a rule?
That's not a rule.
Okay, help me out.
The rule is this, and the law is straight. It is a consideration that the decision maker can take into account when arriving at his decision. It is a factor that he can take into consideration.
Okay.
Let's say, for instance, God forbid, if I was convicted for child molesting, and I wanted to actually be supervisor in a daycare, that's a consideration that the daycare person must factor in. Do we want person who had that particular thing involved with child raising?
I understand.
I'm not saying that, but it is not an automatic block. Okay? And the scenario that is being painted in the minds of the public generally, being painted in the minds of the lawyers serving on the bar, is that he's been to jail, he should not be a member of the bar. Okay. John Boswick was convicted for possession of ammunition.
Was he?
He blamed it on the housemaid that they probably put it in.
Hold on, before you get everybody in trouble. Was he convicted?
To the details.
He wasn't convicted, as best as I remember.
He was convicted.
Okay.
He was made to pay a fine.
Okay.
$15,000 thereabouts.
All right.
Okay. He didn't accept responsibility for his action. He's my friend, but I have to call it for what it is. Okay? My society, including my church, came out in full support of John Boswick. Names. It is no wonder I've been called Nicodemus all my life.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Nicodemus. Obviously the matters are different, and we don't want to get too deep into that lest we get ourselves in areas of trouble. But it's an interesting story. It's an interesting story from the point of view that, well, from one perspective, there are rules and mores and values that govern society and govern certain segment of society. And certainly you have to be willing to face up to the consequences. Obviously, you did your time and you were, contrite. You dealt with it. That you should not have an opportunity going forward is something which I think would make for great discussion, and at least someone should take a look at that. Is there a possibility? Yeah, is it what you did was so bad that would prevent you from being an objective arbiter or a member of the legal fraternity? Caller, you're on Guardian Radio. Go ahead.
Got disconnected. But I don't want to get side case in my particular situation.
Yeah.
I just want to encourage maturity in our society.
Yeah.
There are persons like myself, Brother Edwards, who wants to leave a better Bahamas in place. I was born in a good Bahamas. Somebody left for good Bahamas for me. I was born in 66, grew up in a wonderful country. Okay? Then came the 80s, as we call the drug era. Are you there?
I'm still here.
And I had a wonderful life as a Bahamian. Notwithstanding all I may have experienced in life, my childhood, somebody provided that for me. Because my father died in 1970, means I grew up most of my life, fatherless. But I had, the society back then was a surrogate to me. All right? That was a wonderful Bahamas. And I'm not saying we're going to ever capture that in its totality, but by God's help, Brother Edwards, I would like to know that I've been involved with making or leaving a better Bahamas. Can I just say just one thing, a consideration to you?
Go ahead.
I don't prolong you.
Yeah, go ahead.
But Edwards, you remember the story of Jonah, the city of Nineveh?
Yeah, the man who went in the belly of the whale.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know the story of the belly of the whale and all, but I really believe there was a city of Nineveh. But suffice it to be, as it may or may not be. Let's say if Jonah was sent to do the work, the task that he was asked to do. And he went and did it in the first instance.
Yeah, he was reluctant, wasn't he?
But he was. History shows he was. He didn't go in the first instance. And therefore there was consequences, repercussions. As the story goes, he was on a ship, and the nature itself revolted against his presence on that boat, and they cast lot, and he was taken in the lot, and he was cast over, and we know the whale came along and swallowed him. But I'm saying to you that let's supposition that he had gone in the first instance and preached that message, and the people didn't listen. It was off his shoulder.
Yes.
He
would have discharged his responsibility.
Then go on a cruise if he wanted to.
Yes.
Because he done what he's supposed to do. But Edwards, if you try to reach out to the Bahamas, if you try and you try, and no one's listening, sooner or later, the people that's trying to really do good for this country are going to say, hey, I done it. I followed what I was asked to do. I'm gone.
Okay.
I'm going on my cruise.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. It was certainly interesting hearing your story. Thank you for contributing that. But, these are real life issues which are out there. So maybe, I don't know who the person is. If he jump out of the bush on me, I wouldn't know that it is him unless he tells me it is him. So I don't know him. But here he is sharing his story of challenges. He made some decisions. He was punished for those decisions. He went to prison, did his time, and decided to embark on a course of study, did some things. But now he's at a place where, there's no way he can use that knowledge which he has gained. The question then becomes, is this inequitable? Is this something which we need to look at as a society? Is there something so egregious about his act which really excludes him? He tell us his version, or at least in a couple of seconds. I don't know what the facts are. But what are the rules? I don't know what those rules are either. But it would seem to me that there must be an opportunity for discussions along these things. And if it is such that we have a place where there are second chances, or third chances, or fourth chances, then certainly those should be given. I don't know how all of these things work, so I won't jump into the deep end on that. But I'm saying that I could be looking at this gentleman every single day and figuring, well, why don't he go do something with his life? Why does he speak that well? Why does he display an understanding of the law, but is not doing anything without appreciating that he's faced with a particular challenge, which may need the intervention of some people, some persons, some parliament, maybe, I am not sure. Don't know what the laws are on that. But this is a case where could be parallel, where you have many, 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 many people out there working hard, doing every single thing just to make two ends meet, but just can't get them to meet no matter how hard they try. And if in the perchance they do meet, the problems widen. Because that's just how life is. As soon as something happens, then there's another of people. But he said something which is very, very important. Very, very important. This COVID-19, and it aligns with what we are discussing here, this COVID-19 represents a time for careful contemplation and preparation. Let's align it to his own reality. We are locked into prison of sort for 2 years. The question is, what are we doing with that 2 years? Are we going to read as much as we can, study as much as we can, become wiser as best as we can, such that in the ensuing years, we are in a better position to do better, to make the changes? Or are we going to treat this like business as usual and get to the place where all of a sudden we realize, shucks, if we had only done A, if we had only done B, C, or D, things would have been different. So I believe that we should put ourselves in a mindset of being proactive, anticipate what the issues are. I touch on one from an educational perspective. There are some other things which I want to deal with and will deal with. We have to anticipate what is coming down the pipe. We have to prepare for it. It's not going to be easy moving from where we are, getting out of the challenges and the holes and getting over the obstacles that we are facing now. But because we are facing it and because of having gone through the things that we are going through now, little bit further down the road is going to have its own set of challenges because of these challenges that we face. We have to anticipate them. We have to prepare for them. We have to be very, very much ready for the moment when we step into that future. You're listening to The Hit Back. I'm your host, Hubert Edwards, sitting in for Nahaja Black. We take a break here, and when we come back, we look at some other aspects of our discussion. Come right back.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas. This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
Have you heard about the COVID vaccine raffle? If you are vaccinated against COVID-19, you can enter to win amazing prizes like food store gift certificates, hotel stays, beach excursions, and so much more. Even if you are previously vaccinated, you can still enter to win. The COVID vaccine is free, safe, and protects you from severe COVID-19 infections. Don't delay. Get vaccinated today and enter to win. Visit www.vaxbahamas.com to register.
Have you been planning to upgrade your bathroom or go big and update your tile floor? Well, now is the time because Nassau Tile has 20% off store-wide and as much as 40% off ceramic tiles. Looking for unbeatable bargains? Check out the selected items that are a whopping 40 to 60% off. So get down to Nassau Tile on Dowdswell Street before October 2nd and save big on the best selection of tiles in Nassau. Trust the tile experts at Nassau Tile today.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas.
It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit
And welcome back to The Hit Back, sitting in for Nahaja Black. She's out there someplace. I understand she's resting, taking in her magnesium and getting her migraine situation sorted out. We wish her all the best and speedy recovery. You know, maybe it's just rest. I figure she's worked hard, especially over the election period. She just needs some time to rest and recuperate. This individual says, "Hi, Mr. Edwards. I love your show. You're a very intelligent man. Thank you. I'm not too sure about that, but thank you so much. You know, Mr. Edwards, I think they should change that law. If you were convicted, serve your time in prison, you should not have a record for the rest of your life. What do you think?" No. If you are convicted, there may be ways of expunging your record, but to just say that once you finish the time, you don't have a record, no, because it's based on decisions that you have made. I know some people go to prison and they're innocent, but to just do away with the record, I would say no. There's some instances where the matter is really minor, like persons going to prison for smoking herb and really small things, stoning somebody's tree or something like that. Yeah, but again, we don't know. This one says, if the PLP really believe in a second chance and Ryan Pinder knows the gentleman who has been in prison, then he should be given a second chance. But that depends on what he was convicted for. Definitely depends on what he was convicted for. But of course, the Honorable Attorney General cannot buy himself because he knows the gentleman. Give him a second chance. I'm sure that there's some rules out there. The only thing I would say, if the rules allow, then he should. I am at a disadvantage here. I'm really at a disadvantage in being able to speak to what those rules may be. But if the rules allow, and he is qualified, and there's nothing to take away from him practicing, then he should be given the opportunity. We have a caller who has been hanging on for a while. Caller, go ahead. You're on Guardian Radio.
Yes, I just wanted to make an input to what I've heard over the past few minutes with that gentleman who was incarcerated and came out and got to the level that he had or have reached, become a lawyer, and is asking for a second chance. But he does have a second chance, just by the mere fact of being out of prison, and sentence wasn't contempt one. But as we look at the rules, and what has really came across was several Bible stories. One was Moses and his rod, and one was Jonah, and who cast into the sea and went into the belly of a big fish, not a whale, but a big fish, the Bible says. And Nineveh, Jonah didn't want to go to Nineveh because he didn't want to forgive the people in Nineveh. That was his reason for not going. He felt like God could do what he felt like doing with them. It didn't matter to him. He didn't care. But he had an opportunity to do something that he was asked to do. So I think that there may be a calling on this man's life in another area, but, the Bible always says, seek ye first the kingdom. And then a crime just seems to be a crime when you're caught. Because there's so many people in today's world, and even as we speak, are doing crimes that are worse than what he did that came to light, and getting away with it because of the fact that no one knows. There had to be a consideration for Bahamians in their own country. Like he said, it's a call to maturity. Country needs to get a little further matured. We're not matured. I mean, right now, the government is just now looking at the previous government, just looking at giving those persons who are incarcerated or have a record for a joint marijuana that they were prohibited from even getting jobs. They ruled. Give them a chance. And now they're looking at expunging records so that I know people who went to jail for drugs, big drugs, and was given a chance by prime ministers, by people in high places in government, come out with a clean record and take up a government job. But who speaks to those things? They were given a chance. So why Paul killed a Christian? He was given a chance. God spoke to that. So we can't build ourselves up to a maturity as we ought to, because we follow the dictates of the kingdom. And it's only those same 10 commandments that we follow for the kingdom, and we claim to follow for the world. Everyone has their own perception of it. So we need to get to the bottom and mature. Give people a chance.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's what I want to say.
Thank you for your contribution.
Right.
So, yes, and that was, a little bit of a detour in a way. We weren't discussing that corely, but that it's an interesting story. The points I was making earlier about making sure that we look at the social inequities, take care of the poorest amongst us, plan for them, leads us into this thing which we was referred to as economic scarring. And economic scarring really refers to the extent to which, having gone through an economic crisis, persons suffer in the long term. And, you could apply it to the country as a whole, or you could apply it more precisely to individuals. So here's an example. You used to work at a big business place. As a result of the crisis, that business place went out of business or have to reduce its workforce, and you happen to, unfortunately, be one of those persons. You used to make $50,000 a year, but you did that because you were there for a number of years. They like you, they know how you work, you were promoted, you were given increases. You make $50,000 a year. The next job you take up, if you can find another job, pays you 35 or 30. Your lifestyle has now changed. It in turn impacts your ability to send your children to school. You had a young daughter, very brilliant, who was about to go off to college. But with that shift in salary, with that shift in income, she now has to consider staying out for a year to see whether or not things are going to get better. The child you had in private school, because private school was going to give that child an advantage, you have to shift that child, and maybe they're now someplace in a public school, which is not as conducive to maybe their learning style or the opportunities for them to grow. So there's economic scar. Unfortunately, after we look back for 4 years or so, that young lady never made it to university. The son who was put into public school, this is not to knock public school, just an example, didn't do so well. The environment wasn't cool for him. He cowered a little bit. He got a little bit bullied here and there. Was different environment from what he was used to. So he didn't do well. Is opportunities for getting or pursuing a certain type of a career, which would make life a little bit easier for him or better for him, and also help his parents, that's not there anymore. Well, you see where I'm going. These individuals are now worse off than before the crisis. And that type of a scarring, that type of a challenge, then translates to the next generation. So the Human Development Index within the country, if this is broad-based enough, suffers because persons are now disadvantaged because they do not have the same access to education because they just cannot afford it. It's not that the country isn't doing well. The country would send you to primary school and high school, but now it's your turn to get to tertiary level, but you're unable to do so as a direct result of a crisis. And that scarring then leaves this long trail, which can be generational. And so we have to prepare for that. The missing out on education, having this generational impact and implication, where all of a sudden now, we all have to, live in the same house, and too much people in the same house, and persons are exposed to things that they're not supposed to expose, and all sorts of stuff happen. And the quality of life diminishes. The opportunities of life reduce. And the same potential which existed before, while in real terms it's still there, the ability to manifest it is significantly reduced in the instant of that individual or maybe the family. And that in turn has a knock-on effect on the community and the country. So we have to be mindful. It's not just about the individual, it's really about, at the end of the day, the collective. And the question that we must face, and certainly the question that policymakers must occupy themselves with, is to what extent will the COVID-19 pandemic result in any significant levels of economic scarring? And because all things being equal, we know that there is going to be some, no matter how you slice it. Then the question then becomes, how do we mitigate that? What sort of an intervention, what type of interventions can we create to lessen the impact thereof? How do we do that? And this is one of the reasons why you will hear me say, I say it before, I'll say it now, and I'll say it in time to come. The Hubert Minnis administration didn't have an easy time. It had to be very terrible and horrible in making some of the decisions that they make. It was tough. The extent to which they did that well, the country decided. And maybe the country was saying, well, you didn't do it well. But it now translates to the Brave Davis's administration. And they're not going to have things easy, because while they have to be in a rebuilding and a remedial mode, they also have to be looking far out strategically. There are a number of issues which is going to create will arrest their attention and also distract them from the immediate thing in front of them. Because it won't be effective. It cannot be effective unless they're fixing for today and seasoning the path for tomorrow. Because tomorrow, as night follows days, the impact of today is going to affect us. Now, from a financial or economic point of view, and this is from at the individual level, the personal level, the truth is, until we get back to what we considered as close as possible to what was normal before, we have no true benchmark or no true basis for assessing collectively the extent to which persons have been impacted. What do I mean by that? So an individual enjoyed a certain lifestyle before COVID. They would go to the restaurant 3 times per week. They would do certain things every month, every other week, and so on and so forth. They don't do that now, and there's no expectation for them to do it because there's a call for social distancing and lockdown and curfews, right? So that reality creates a saving or a covering of what was normal. And the new normal makes it different. It's like companies out there which were, they were making oodles of sales. The sales went away to a large extent, but not totally. But because of COVID, there were some other savings. They save on expenses. They save on light and water and air conditioning bill and so on and so forth. And that created a compensation so the company remained profitable. Now that creates an opportunity to make adjustment. However, if things go back to normal pre-COVID, pre-crisis, which requires the same level of input as the pre-crisis input, but now with a new level of post-crisis income, the company is going to crash. It is going to fail because the revenue is way down below the expenses. We know that regardless of what savings took place across the length and breadth of COVID, BEC light bill isn't going down, will not go down. So when we get back into that stream where things are much more normal, we're going to see some things jump out at us as a country. We're going to see pockets of individuals who are suffering right now, but it's not as evident as it will be then. And this is what we must prepare for. We have to get to the place where we start to think down the road into the future and how that is going to help us to be better. As an example, one of the areas which we must pay very, very, very close attention to, and I know that it gets attention, but the attention is largely pinhole around COVID, and that is the healthcare system. It is true that access to healthcare system has been adversely impacted by COVID, voluntarily and involuntarily. Voluntarily, some people just don't want to go to the hospital. They will avoid it as much as they can. Involuntarily, There are a myriad of treatments which persons need to make their lives comfortable, to help them to enjoy a certain quality of life, which has been deprioritized by hospitals because they don't have no space, they don't have no bed, and so on and so forth. So like elective surgery. Things which, because it says elective, it may very well impact significantly the individual who is being bothered by the particular ailment, quality of life, and needs that to live and live well and be happy, as opposed to going through pain and worry and consternation. So we don't see these things. And so the access to healthcare, or the lack of access, will manifest itself in the long term, not maybe in some instances, not the long term, but the near long term, the very near future. Because there are some persons who are missing treatment today and will get worse in the next 6 months, in the next 12 months. And how many of those are out there? And that in and of itself puts pressure on the country, because we'll be sick. It will affect the persons available for productive work. So we have to be mindful of these things. I listened this morning to an interview on Morning Blend with Dr. Pinto. And if you heard it, I think you will agree with me that it was absolutely very troubling. It was always an uncomfortable interview. I don't know about you, but as a man, every time I hear an interview about cancer, what do you call it? The word slipped me, but it's have to do with the male. Prostate cancer, yeah, thank you. Prostate cancer. Always an uncomfortable discussion for me. I don't matter if I just came from the doctor last week and get all of my result and my PSA and all of that look good. Don't like to hear it, but I discipline myself to listen. But the information that he shared on the state of the healthcare system, the availability of equipment, the availability of certain modalities for treatment is frightening. Frightening, absolutely frightening. And no disrespect to anybody. No disrespect to anybody. And I think he did this deliberately to drive home his point. He said he sent persons to Haiti, or facilitated somebody going to Haiti, in order to get a particular treatment, which there's no equipment of that type or working equipment of that type here in the Bahamas. He made some comparisons with Jamaica, with some other countries within the region, Turks and Caicos, so on and so forth, and it's absolutely uncomfortable. So beyond the old discussion of, hey, COVID has taken over all the beds and so on and so forth, and we are out of oxygen and all of this, right? We must not lose sight of the fact that we have institutions, in this case, healthcare, in this country, which has been for a very long time at a detrimental level of being under provision. Detrimental level. And it is part and parcel of the reason, I think, why in many instances you have ailments and sickness in the Bahamas, because persons just can't afford and don't have access, and not everyone has the ability to jump on a plane and go to Miami or Cuba or someplace else, Florida, to access healthcare. It says, therefore, on the back of the call from the new Minister of Health, that there is a need for spending in that segment, that we have a much bigger problem, a much more significant problem than we may want to admit, or maybe some people pretend to be the case. I wrote an article recently but it was in relation to economic issues, or at least looking at the economy. And it says we must face up to the brutal facts. Every single thing can be translated ultimately to finances and economics. I could make that happen, and I'm sure you can too. But here is the truth. Here is where we are. If consistently we are allocating monies to healthcare and to education through the national budget, and those monies have been seemingly insufficient because they're not buying the equipments needed. We have, at this stage, we have challenges with having sufficient personnel. We have personnel who are in a state of unsettlement. The reality is, the truth is, and I want to be very careful with this, right? The truth is that we have a cake that we are slicing up as best as we can. But as much as we desire, no one is going to be filled. And the cake remains the same from one year to the next. And so the next year we slice a similar sized cake again. The difference is thinner slices go to different places. We'll come to the place where the difference in allocation from one year to the next will become negligible, insignificant, won't make a difference. So as a country, we have a lot of work to do, significant amount of work to do. We have to grow this. But we have to pay attention to the background, what's in the back. It's like going to a restaurant where you get this 10-course meal and everything out front look nice and hunky-dory. You have to take a peep in the back. There's a lot which is taking place there. And in the back of the house for us, because we are familiar with tourism and hotels and so on, in the back of the house for us, the healthcare, the education, the social system, there are challenges, significant challenges. And this is why this particular administration is going to have its hand full. And this is why I think as a country, we all have to get together and make sure that our effort is felt. It's not making a case for this particular administration. This should always be the case. Every single thing that you do it in the interest of nation building. But believe me, and this would still be the case if Dr. Hubert Minnis' administration had continued. It's, in my mind, in my analysis, based on the public information I can see and the narrow understanding that I have, it is challenging. Not impossible, not at any way, shape, or form fatal where we are, but it is challenging. And it is challenging because we have a number of issues which have accumulated over a number of years, which are just sitting there waiting for remedial action. So when you don't have available equipment and facilities in your healthcare system, that's always going to be a problem. Availability of human resource, certainly a problem. When you are listed as the richest country in the region, but on some of these very, very important and fundamental issues which speaks to the well-being of the people, we are not being compared favorably. That has to be a problem. It has to be a problem. It may say that the whole story isn't in, for example, the per capita income. And we know that. But we have to accept that. We have to fess up to it. We have to understand and speak to what the realities are and fix them and start to fix them. Everything is fixable. I believe so. And I believe that we have the people to fix it. Brilliant people in the Bahamas. Very, very brilliant people. Sometimes we are our own problems in that we do not often, sometimes, some people do not display the ability to step from in front of themselves so that they can progress and others can progress. But if we decide to do this together, as a collective, some fundamental and important changes can be made and will be realized. So I'm saying to you that COVID has unleashed a social, economic, financial, psychological, mental, and many other forms of disruption on this country and on the people. The road forward has to be holistic. It has to look at all of these. Can't be just one way. Can't be just a focus on a few things. It has to be holistic. And in that holistic consideration, the most important aspect is how are we taking care of us, of the people, especially those who find themselves on the margins, those who find themselves pushed to the periphery of society, those who find themselves operating below the poverty line, those who find themselves in disadvantageous situations where the idea of growing careers and wealth creation becomes a humongous challenge for them. It's really, I think, the next couple of years for the Bahamas is really about how effectively can the country, through those who lead it, facilitate a renaissance, a rejuvenation, a recreation, if you will, of opportunities, of outlook, of hope, desire to some extent, but certainly the crystallization of a collective vision of how we will move forward to move the country forward by moving the people forward. It's going to be an interesting time, but I believe that working collectively, it is possible. We can get it done. Must be done. Otherwise, there'll be a high price to pay. Let's take a break here, and when we come back, I want to just make a little bit of a shift. Listening for your calls too, but make a little bit of a shift to talk about the assessment and some of the things that we're hearing in the news today. Why are we spending so much? Why is this not working? What is happening here? How should we go about this? I have some thoughts on this. Come right back. You're listening to The Hit Back. I'm your host, Hubert Edwards, sitting in for Nahaja Black. Don't move.
Attention all students in grade 4 through 12. You think you know about money? Well, the Central Bank of the Bahamas is giving you a chance to prove it and win cash in the 2021 Get Money Smart Bahamas Video Essay Competition. Can you tell us why you think the Bahamian economy is an ideal model for digital financial services? If you can, just produce a short video submission before October 22nd and show us you are money smart. Cash prizes will be given in various age categories, but you must get your parents' permission to enter. For more information, visit www.getmoneysmartbahamas.com or see our post on social media.
Tired of banks forcing you to use technology to bank the way they want you to? Your convenience is important. So no matter what your banking needs, Commonwealth Bank's friendly staff are always available in branch for that personal one-on-one service. But when you choose technology, our online and mobile banking app offers you state-of-the-art functionality. The choice is yours. Commonwealth Bank. Bank the way you want.
Baja sugar, sugar, let's get a sugar ring. Softer, smoother, and amazing skin. Oh, Baja sugar, sugar, we're the sugar ladies, giving you skin soft as a baby's. Goodbye hair, we'll take good care of you.
Come visit us at Baja Retreat Spa on East Bay Street. Contact us at 323-6711. or visit us online at www.baharetreat.com.
You invest in your children, your home, and your community. But are you investing in your financial future? At CFAL, we specialize in investment management, retirement planning, mutual funds, and private wealth management. Our team of experts never stops helping you plan for tomorrow. Because tomorrow begins today. Call us at 502-7010 to see what our financial advisors can do for you. CFAL, growing wealth for future generations.
To those affected by a hurricane, the damage is far greater than the eye can see. It's the pain of experiencing damage to your home. But there are people right here that can help. We're CG Atlantic General. We're your neighbors. We live here and work here too. We're always ready to answer calls and to process your claims as quickly as possible. So when a storm turns your life upside down, we're here to turn it around. CG Atlantic General. Good like that. Security and General Insurance Company Limited, trading as CG Atlantic General. Contact a CG Atlantic General broker today.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas.
And welcome back to the Hit Back. This Texas says, why does it seem like the PLP used young faces on their ticket to get elected and now they're bringing back the same old regime that people rejected 4 years ago? Isn't that insanity? What different result do we expect with the same old characters? There are developments out there which have persons, discussing. What I would say to that is we have to expect that there's some level of experience which needs to be around the table. There's no question about that. There are persons who are going to be needed in specific areas. Now, I don't have anything to say about any particular person here or there. I try as much as possible not to get into the politics of things. I would say, though, at the end of the day, the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister and the rest of the leadership will have to make the big calls and will have to understand that persons are watching and individuals are being mindful of the decisions being made. And if you make a particular decision which may be unpopular or in some way, persons may ask questions, then answer the question. Feel free to be open with your rationalization and your justification. It may seem like a small thing or a bothersome thing, but it's one of those difference. It's one of those things which we say, hey, we value you enough to rationalize why we're doing what we're doing. And I think it adds to the governance platform, it adds to the transparency, it adds to the idea of partnership between the administration and the populace. So, we have to figure that out. Put that question to someone who is more connected with the political scene. They may be able to give you a better answer, but I hope that helped somewhat. So we are hearing about the analysis. Obviously, different ministers are now starting to look at their portfolio and getting an understanding, meeting with individuals. As an example, and this is just as an example, we see where the Honorable O.B. Wilchcombe has indicated that too much money is being spent on buying food. I'm not drawing a conclusion one way or the next on that. Here's what I have to say, though. We should expect, and we must accept that there is going to be an analysis and an assessment as to what the current state of the country is. It must happen. If that doesn't happen, then the individuals who have now taken over the leadership and who will be running the country for the next time being will have absolutely no basis on which to manage. They would just be kind of, shooting in the dark, spitting in the wind. So an analysis must happen, assessment must happen. What is important, though, is that we must get that analysis right. It has to be fundamental, it has to be sound, it has to be based on an assessment of all the factors taken together, and pronouncements thereon needs to be slow, deliberate, and well considered. Why is this so? For a number of reasons. If you speak about it too early and you're wrong, you're likely to be resistant in going the other way, which may very well be the right way. If you speak about it too early and you're wrong, you're likely to cause consternation in some places. If you do not take the time to get a full appreciation of exactly what you're dealing with, you may be right, but the problem may be ill-defined, and you end up solving for the wrong problem. So one, I think we need to be very careful. As a country, as a population, let's agree that we must expect this assessment. It ought to be normal. Now, some persons look at it like, why are you doing this? Why are you stopping this? Let that be normal. Let that be an assessment. Let that be a lease which is given to a new administration. Let's not put that in any area where there's rancor. Necessary. But in that assessment, let there be no space for political gamesmanship. Absolutely none. As everyone accept the necessity thereof. The assessment must be comprehensive, it must be fair, it must be balanced, and it must be discussed with the level of objectivity, which helps me to understand exactly what is happening. Like, for example, and I'm just using this as an example because that's the one which was out there. When the Honorable Minister says, we're spending too much money on food, my mind started to go crazy, like, why you spend the money on food, but exactly what is it that they spend it on? Why did they do what they do? I understand that there's some third man, middle man, fourth man. Why was that necessary? Or is it unnecessary? Or maybe not. Maybe somebody tried it a particular way and that was ineffective. And this, while not optimal or maybe not comfortable, it may very well be the best way of doing it. You see where I'm going? It therefore means that we have to be very slow and deliberate. And this is not a criticism of the minister, but this is the one which is in front of us. All I'm saying is, let's be very, very mindful that the main purpose of the assessment should be to identify the fundamental areas of deficiencies which need to be corrected. And in that correction, it may very well be we are going to be done with this in totality. That's one approach. But also, it may be a situation where it's not totally bad, it's not totally wrong, it's not totally ineffective, but it can be improved and enhanced. And in that instance, it would be foolhardy to throw out the baby with the bathwater. So what I'm saying here is focus. How do we ensure that we focus on the things, and how do we who are looking on give the administration the lease to do that and to make the changes? Because if they do not get it right, if they do not make the assessment, then we cannot fix these things for the future. We are going to have this cycle over and repeatedly where every couple of years or so, somebody else turn up and say, it was done wrong. And we start over again and again and again. And that carries a significant cost with it in my mind. We have to get to the place where that is changing. So great care should be taken to ensure that unless the initiative is totally not good, it's damaging to the country, it's damaging to the intent which it was expected to serve, the people who it was expected to serve. It's not delivering value, not efficient, not effective, unless it's diametrically opposed to a new policy position embraced by the new administration, which they would have highlighted in their platform, and we voted for them, so we gave them lease, we gave them a mandate to make that change. Unless that is the case, then we should be searching for improvement and enhancement to make it better, as opposed to radically change it. If it works but can work better, make it work better. Don't change it simply because that's what we do. We are in this, I think, interesting cycle since 2002, where the administrations have been changing. So 2002 to 2007, I think that would have been the PLP administration under former Prime Minister Perry Christie. Then 2007 to 2012, that would have been Honorable Hubert Ingram, I think, yeah? And 2012 to 2017, Mr. Christie returned, and then after that it was Dr. Hubert Minnis, and then here we are with Brave Davis, Honorable Brave Davis. Let me say this. Up to now, that has happened. You can't go back and you can't change it. There's nothing we can do about that. Can't change it. But what has become evident is the fact that 5 years is not a sufficient cycle to plan and effect fundamental changes needed to move the country forward. Let me say that again. And I'm going to be very careful how I say this, and I'm going to explain why am I saying this and how we can provide treatment for this. 5 years, based on where the country is not a sufficient cycle to plan, remediate, implement, and sustain the things which are necessary to move this country forward. If the country is therefore caught in this vortex of changing administration every 5 years, there's a couple of things which need to be done. Obviously, first and foremost, each administration must operate in such a way that it figures out how to extend its tenure by staying in favor with the electorate. But beyond that, more fundamentally, there is no way that you can predict the shift of the electorate. The Bahamas has, I think, shown a willingness, the voters within the Bahamas have shown a willingness to throw any party out of power as long as they no longer believe that they're doing what they desire them to do or they're serving them. It's just as plain and simple as that. We can dive down into the numbers, we can slice and dice them, we can do the statistics, and that must be done to better understand maybe what the persons are thinking. But at the end of the day, is the administration get thrown out after 5 years. So it was 25 years on the trot, then 10 years, then boom, 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 boom. Once every term. So we must figure out a way to insulate the country against that possibility. And that insulation comes only, in my mind, from the implementation of a consensus vision which is committed to by all entities who are interested in leading the country, buy-in. That, in my mind, is what a national development plan is supposed to do, was supposed to do, but it didn't work in this instance. It absolutely didn't work. I believe that the current administration must use this opportunity to demonstrate its long-term commitment to country, given its stated indication that the National Development Plan forms part and parcel of its vision going forward. But to dust that off and to renew the conversations and to renew the demand and securing of commitment around the National Development Plan going forward. And as a populace, as a people, I think we have to let our voices be heard that, look, once and for all, we want to know in the long term where exactly the country is going, what exactly should we be working on, what are the visions, what are the things that we can agree with, what are the things we can come to consensus on, such that regardless of who is there, we are guaranteed almost to be moving in a particular direction, which is gainful, productive, progressive, uplifting, beneficial, delivering growth. Because if the electoral process, the process of electing a new administration is in and of itself disruptive, and it becomes disruptive and will continue to be disruptive because of this. Let's take any three particular terms. In term one, you vote out party A and put in party B. And the consensus is we're not satisfied with what you do in party A. And party A had this fantastic vision, a vision which had a lot of good things in it, mark you. But we kick them out nonetheless and we put in party B, and party B has a vision too. But that vision is different from party A. May have some intersection, some overlap, but it's different. And so they work on that, and you get upset with them and you say, we're going to kick you out too. Now, we are back to party A, but they have a choice to make. Do they represent the vision as it was, or they behave like rational people do and say, well, when we had this vision, you kick us out, so we need to refresh it and to look at some things differently. We also maybe need to consider why the other party got kicked out, and we may need to move in the opposite direction of some of the things that they're doing, which may not necessarily be a direction, but it's opposite, and it will find favor or immediate favor with the electorate. So these are some things that we must consider. We have to start thinking about the future of the country beyond the parties, beyond election, far out, 15, 20, 25 years. Because it's clear that this changing back and forth is untenable. And so where the Bahamas is now, as I said before, can be fixed in that short time. Just can't work. The time to get the plans in and to get them up and running, it just won't work if there's going to be a change of administration. However, if we were comfortable, if there was a guarantee of sort that the programs put into place, regardless of who may take over and regardless of where they may be in their execution, they will be continued to the extent that they are good and effective and doing well, or there will be adjustments made, but not a totally right about turn shift, then that's fine. It don't really matter. Select party A and select party B, as long as they are effective in running the country and the country is growing, and that people could be cool with that. But I believe it's up to the parties to say, hey, our value proposition takes us beyond one term, and convince the populace that that is the case. But the populace needs a little bit more guarantee than that. And that guarantee comes in having a national development plan, a consensus vision of the Bahamas, where the Bahamas wants to be in the next short while, next long while. I think it is important. It's absolutely, absolutely important for us to be walking in the same direction as a country, outside of partisan politics, understanding what the end game is. It provides a platform on which I think great growth can be secured. So the time we spend looking at A or B should be really a consideration about how that particular party is going to lead. Because you have a very clear objective, largely clear objective of vision, a national vision. And then the question becomes, who, by how they lead, is best suited? Right now, I think we are not unique to the Bahamas, but we are mostly concerned about who will lead and not always considering how they will lead. And that is where the shift takes place. Because the how then say, well, I will do it this way, and then in the next 5 years, I will do it this way, and the progress is not always been made. So I think if we can do that, then we can create and protect continuity of vision and plan. And certainly the National Development Plan is the way to go. We have to do that. And we have to start thinking about how we are working as individuals to make this happen, to move forward. We're going to leave it there today. You've been listening to The Hit Back. I'm your host, Hubert Edwards, sitting in for Nahaja Black. Certainly look forward to being with you another time. Walk good, one love, and Ubuntu.